Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. I want to apologize first off for being MIA for the past little bit. I was on vacation. I just got back, but I'm feeling really rejuvenated and ready to get back on the grind. As you can see by the title and thumbnail, today we're going to be playing a game of Start Bench Cut. I'm sure the majority of you know how this works, but for those of you who don't, it's a pretty simple concept. I'll be given 3 players to choose from, and of those 3 players, I have to say who I would want to start, who I would want to bench, and who I would want to cut. So I'm basically ranking the players 1 to 3, and there's 2 different scenarios as well. There's a single game scenario and a franchise scenario. The difference between the two: a franchise scenario, I'm basically choosing which of the 3 players I would want to have moving forward on my franchise at their current age and get them for the rest of their career. And single game is obviously just ranking the players on if it were just one game. The first comment of the video comes from JTube, who says 1 game scenario between Prime Lindstrom. It's spelled Lindstrom. I'm assuming you mean Nick Lidstrom though, and not Gustav Lindstrom, who's currently on the Red Wings. Prime Erik Karlsson and Cale Makar right now. I mean, come on, I'm definitely starting Prime Nick Lidstrom. In my eyes, there might be a little bit of bias here, but I think he's the greatest defenseman of all time. 7 Norris trophies, multiple Stanley Cups, and you talk about players, hitting their peak or being in their prime usually happens between ages 23 and 30. Well, Nick Lidstrom was in his prime for his entire career. He didn't have a bad season. He won the Norris Trophy in his second last season at the age of 40. Just insane. So I'm starting Lidstrom, and between Makar and Prime Karlsson, I love me some Cale Makar, but I think I'm going to go with benching Prime Karlsson. What I view as Erik Karlsson's prime was him in that 2017 Stanley Cup playoff run with the Ottawa Senators, basically dragging that team to the conference finals. They pushed the Penguins to Game 7 overtime. That version of Erik Karlsson was an absolute animal. That was one of the greatest individual playoff runs that I have ever seen with my own 2 eyes from somebody who wasn't a goaltender. So my final order: starting Nick Lidstrom, Prime Nick Lidstrom that is, benching Prime Erik Karlsson, and cutting Cale Makar. That's no knock against Cale Makar. If you've been subscribed to the channel for a while, you know that I think he's the best defenseman in the NHL right now, but it's hard to match up against Prime Lidstrom and Prime Karlsson. This next comment comes from Brennikin. It's another one involving 3 defensemen, another single game scenario: Seth Jones, Ryan Ellis, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, all defensemen who were traded this offseason. I think I'm going to go with starting Ryan Ellis. I just think he's the most consistent of the 3. I mean, at his peak, I feel like Seth Jones is better when he's playing at his best, but we just saw the season Seth Jones had. It was completely awful. He's a little bit up and down, a little bit hit or miss, so I'm going to go with starting the guy who I know what I'm going to get from, and that's just a really solid 2-way game from Ryan Ellis. As far as between Seth Jones and OEL and who I'm going to bench, this is an easy decision. I'm going to bench Seth Jones and cut Oliver Ekman-Larsson. It just seems like at this point OEL is way past his prime. It's not like he's coming off of one bad season like Seth Jones. OEL has put up some pretty poor results in like each of the past 3 seasons, so of these 3, I feel like he's the one that has to be cut. I'm rooting for him to revive his career in Vancouver though. That would be nice to see. This comment comes from Michael Hohen. I apologize if I butchered your last name. Starting a franchise: Jack Hughes, Lafreniere, Owen Power, the last 3 first overall picks. This is a very interesting one. I usually begin with who I'm going to start, but on this one I'm going to start off with who I'm going to cut, and that is the most recent first overall pick, Owen Power. I feel like you'd be kind of crazy to take Owen Power over either Lafreniere or Jack Hughes. This most recent NHL draft was viewed as a weaker class, especially compared to some of the more recent draft classes we had, and in comparison to what the next 2 are supposed to look like. Owen Power doesn't have the superstar potential that Jack Hughes and Lafreniere do, and that's okay. I still think he's going to be a very good defenseman, and it is kind of hard to compare these players because Power's a defenseman and the other 2 are forwards. But of these 3 options, even though he's the youngest, I feel like if you're starting a franchise, he has to be the one that gets cut. Now, between Jack Hughes and Alexis Lafreniere, I'm going to start Lafreniere and bench Jack Hughes. I think that's the way I'm going to go. You look at both these guys, they have a tremendous amount of potential. Both of them had pretty disappointing rookie seasons, and then Jack Hughes, kind of took it up a notch in his sophomore season, put up much better results. If this was a 1-game scenario, I feel like I'd probably start Jack Hughes. I feel like he's the better player right now, and makes sense, he's a year older, but since it's starting a franchise, I'm going to go with the younger player, the player who I think has more potential, and that is Alexis Lafreniere. From Flyers fan 58, old timers Jason Spezza, Joe Thornton, and Zach Parise. You didn't specify if it was single game or franchise scenario, but given the age of all these players, I'm guessing it's single game, and you didn't say if they were in their primes or anything. So we're just going to go with this one being a single game scenario and all the players being their current age. And with that information, I'm going to cut Joe Thornton. I mean, he's a legend. If this was all these players in their prime, he would be started easily. But at this point in his career, I mean, he's 42. He's extremely slow slow. He's obviously still a very smart player. He puts himself in a good position. He's always going to be a good playmaker and have a decent set of hands. But at this point in his career, he just doesn't really bring a whole lot to the game performance-wise. He definitely brings a whole lot, I'm sure, in a locker room and helping younger players. But if I had to just win one single game and I had to choose between these three, he would be the one to get cut. And between Jason Spezza and Zach Parise, I'm going to actually start Jason Spezza and bench Zach Parise, I think. I mean, Jason Spezza is coming off of a very good season. I think he had north of 35 points in a 56-game season for a fourth liner at his age. That's incredible. Do I think he'll score at that pace again this upcoming season? Probably not, but he proved he's still a very impactful player, and if I'm being honest, he looked like one of the only Maple Leafs who wanted to win in the playoffs against Montreal. So final order, start Jason Spezza, bench Zach Parise, who's still a pretty decent play driver offensively at this point in his career, and of course cut Jumbo Joe. Moving along now to the next comment. This one comes from Joseph Zeta, who says, franchise scenario, every player is their current age as of 2021, Mikko Rantanen, Jonathan Huberdeau, and Mitch Marner. Three of some of the NHL's absolute best wingers to choose from. Since it's a franchise scenario, I'm gonna cut Jonathan Huberdeau. I feel like you could make an argument he's the best of the three right now. However, he is 4 years older than both Rantanen and Marner, and he's also only a couple seasons away from unrestricted free agency, so I just don't think he'd be the best option here in terms of starting a franchise, so he's going to be the one to get cut. Now, between Mikko Rantanen and Mitch Marner, this one's actually incredibly difficult. They're the same age, drafted in the top 10 of the same draft. They both, I believe, were in the top 10 in NHL scoring this past season. You really can't go wrong here. Since it is so close, in my opinion, I'm going to go with the guy who has a better contract, and that's Mikko Rantanen. They're both signed, I believe, for the same amount of time, but Rantanen makes close to like $1.7 million less. And also, Mikko Rantanen has proven he can perform at a very high level in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He has over 50 career playoff points already at just the age of 24. Mitch Marner, on the other hand, we know the story there. He has really struggled, especially in the past two playoff runs. So using contract and playoff performance as the tiebreakers, I feel like I got to go with Rantanen here to start my franchise. So final order, start Mikko Rantanen, bench Mitch Marner, and cut Jonathan Huberdeau. The next comment we have comes from Jetta Jets fan. I thought this one was pretty funny. Single game, Tyler Myers, Logan Stanley, and Zdeno Chara, so a bunch of giraffes to choose from here. And I'm assuming this is all the players at their current age, because if it was at their peak, obviously I'm going to start Zdeno Chara, but I don't think that's the case here. You know what? I think I'm actually still going to start Zdeno Chara here. He obviously didn't play huge minutes this past season in Washington. It was more of a sheltered role, but he still put up pretty good results, had good defensive analytics, and that's probably really all Washington wanted from him at this point in his career. And then between Logan Stanley and Tyler Myers, I think I'll bench Logan Stanley. I thought he had a pretty decent rookie season. He really impressed me in the playoffs as well. I'm just not really a big Tyler Myers fan. His contract isn't good, and I know that doesn't really matter here because it's a single game scenario. But man, when it comes to Tyler Myers, his results have been bad for a while now. I feel like a lot of people view him as a defensive defenseman, but he's really not. His defensive numbers have not been good for a while. I feel like for a single game scenario of these three players, whoever you go with starting, they wouldn't really have a big impact on the outcome of the game anyways, so this one was kind of just for fun. But yeah, final order, start Zdeno Chara, bench Logan Stanley, cut Tyler Myers. Next up, we have a comment from Sam G, the first one involving goaltenders of the video. To start a franchise, Shesterkin, Sorokin, or Juuse Saros. This one's extremely difficult. I really don't think there's a wrong answer when choosing between these three. I'm gonna actually start Juuse Saros. I know a lot of people view Sorokin and Shesterkin as, you know, the best up-and-coming goalies in the league, but you have to remember, Juuse Saros isn't old either. He's only 1 year older than Shesterkin. He is the same age as Sorokin. He's 26. I feel like people kind of forget that Juuse Saros is still young because he's been in the league for such a long time, much longer than Shesterkin and Sorokin. He's played 161 total games. All three of these goalies were really good this past season, but the season Saros had was ridiculous. On a Nashville team that was not very good, he had a Vezina caliber season. If it weren't for Saros, Nashville would not have been anywhere close to the Stanley Cup playoffs. He finished with a .927 save percentage. His career save percentage is now up to .920. He's fantastic, so I'm starting him, and if I had to choose between Shesterkin and Sorokin, I think I'm going to go with Igor Shesterkin. They've put up similar numbers in their career so far, and it is a pretty small sample size, of course. I feel like these two are so close, so So as a tiebreaker, I'm going to say Igor Shesterkin because he's 1 year younger than Ilya Sorokin, and also I feel like Sorokin has been in a better situation playing for the New York Islanders, who are such a defensive-minded team. Not to take anything away from Sorokin, he's obviously fantastic, but just kind of using that as a tiebreaker. So my final order, I'm going to start Juuse Saros, bench Igor Shesterkin, and cut Ilya Sorokin. Moving along now, this comment comes from Realistic Sports Fan. 3 Tylers for a single game. Tyler Seguin, Tyler Toffoli, and Tyler Bertuzzi. I'm going to start Tyler Seguin. When he's fully healthy, I feel like he is a level above both Toffoli and Bertuzzi, and also he plays the center position, which is a bonus. And between Bertuzzi and Toffoli, you know, my heart says Bertuzzi, of course, being a Red Wings fan, but the season Toffoli just had with Montreal was incredible. I definitely have to go with him here if it's just a one-game scenario. If it was a franchise scenario, I'd probably go with Bertuzzi because he's a couple years younger, but yeah, for single game, I'm gonna go with benching Toffoli and cutting Bertuzzi. So final order for the 3 Tylers, Tyler Seguin is getting started, Tyler Toffoli is getting benched, and Tyler Bertuzzi is getting cut. And now for the final comment of the video from Braden Corbeil, single game, Draisaitl, Point, Barkov. Also, would you have the same order if it was a franchise scenario? I saved this one for last because honestly, I feel like it is the most difficult to answer. Let me just start by saying I really don't think you can go wrong here. 3 of the top centermen in the league, Draisaitl being a winger at times, they're all the same age, 25 years old. Single game scenario, this is so difficult. Call me crazy, I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree with this, but I think I'm actually going to start Braden Point. We've seen time and time again him show up and score huge goals when it matters most for the Tampa Bay Lightning. At just 25 years old, he already has north of 70 career playoff points, multiple time Stanley Cup champion, of course. He's the definition of a big game player. Heading into a single game scenario like a must-win situation, that's the guy I'd want. And now between Barkov and Draisaitl for who I'm going to bench and who I'm going to cut, this could go either way. I mean, Draisaitl obviously a much better offensive player, or maybe not even much better, but he has a better offensive game than Barkov, and then Barkov obviously significantly better defensively than Leon Draisaitl. Screw it, I'll go with Barkov. If it was franchise scenario, I might go with Draisaitl just because his contract is really good and Barkov is 1 year away from UFA. But yeah, single game, since I feel like it is so close between these two, I'll go with the guy who I know I can count on in both ends of the ice, and that's Barkov. So that is going to do it for today's video, playing a little bit of NHL Start Bench Cut. I'm really excited to be back. I had a lot of fun making this video. If you guys want to see some more videos like this where we kind of play mini games and it involves your guys' comments, then be sure to show your support on this video. Leave it a like. Let me know down below in the comment section you enjoyed. And also, let me know down below in the comment section, did you have any of the same picks as I did, you know, the exact same order, stuff like that.